but because I was forced into one, or I shouldn't say forced, but I was, raised up. Yeah, I grew up with it, yeah. But that, God, I never was taught that, with Christian religion that, the God of love is more like and you can't have a one-on-one with him. You got to go through the source. You got to go through the guy on the stage. You got to do all these things. You got to wear the right, skirt and wear your hair right.
You were raised Catholic.
No, it was Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh.
And they came with with all kinds of rules. Okay, so it was challenging. So when I raised my hand, came down, I was looking for a challenge, and I got one.
Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it works. That's how it works. And you said a very important thing about, religion tells us that we don't have the connection with the divine. Now, again, let's go back and define what is the divine. It's that stream of thought form that created the universe. That's all it is. It doesn't think that Jews are the chosen people. It doesn't hate gays. It doesn't think it's a sin to eat fish on Friday. None of this stuff. It doesn't have an opinion. And so the church, when the church was first organized, the early church in the first 200 years after Jesus died, and this could be a whole other show, which I would love to come back and talk about.
Yeah, I would too. I love this subject.
The history of religion, it's just amazing. And that's, I don't know if you know that I'm in school now, working on a degree in religious studies at 57 years old. I'm going to college, which is pretty bizarre. But so when the church was organized, they had to agree on doctrine. And so they had to come up with a way to tell people, this is how it is, there is no other way. These are the rules that we want you to follow. This is how we want you to think it is. And so in order to do that, there had to be separation from the divine. And so the early church told people, you can't talk to God at all. We will talk to you.
Yeah, only I can.
Only I can, and only a few people in history can. And if you look at the Bible, it's just fascinating because it's like fundamentalists will say, well, this is the Word of God. And it's like, well, so what? God only talked for a couple thousand years and then he stopped? He doesn't talk anymore? Was this like the first and only book he ever wrote? It's ridiculous. And one of the things I always say about God is if you want to understand the concept of God, just replace the pronoun. Instead of saying he, say it. So instead of he loves us, it loves us. We're here to know him. We're here to know it. And when you start to think of it as an it and remove all the humanoid characteristics, it becomes much more accessible. The reason it was presented in the form of a human, he, in the beginning, was so that people would be afraid of it. Because they knew how to be afraid of the Roman soldiers. They knew how to be afraid of enemy tribes. So let's make God look like one of those guys. And then we'll do whatever the church tells us.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's been that way for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And, I knew that at a very early age when I was 16. I remember just really not buying into it. And at that age, I'm 44 now, so when I was 16, you were, when you were a kid, you were seen and not heard pretty much.
Yeah.
And so for someone, to be so audacious, and I had questions that couldn't be answered, and I wasn't trying to do it to, irritate or piss anybody off. I was just wanted to know. I wanted to learn, and that you weren't allowed to ask certain questions, and that wasn't cool with them. So
I had no idea that you were raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't know that. No, that's huge. You should do a show just about your childhood. Maybe
oftentimes I thought about writing a book about it and where I am now and what I was, and if anything, just so that there's some kind of an understanding, and I always ask this question, and I always want to know, why people think that they have to go. Even Catholics do this, I believe. I'm not Catholic, so I couldn't speak specifically for them, but I believe that they have an understanding that only specific people are allowed to have this conversation or have a one-on-one with God. Mm-hmm. And I never understood it, and I still don't to this day. So I've always voiced that. I don't care who anybody is. I don't believe that. I don't think that anybody else should. I mean, that alone, because, I mean, talk about judgment. I mean, who's judging who here, and we, of course, we have a direct connection, but we're taught not to. So, but anyway, enough about that. We'll definitely get together and talk about that, because we got about 4 minutes left, and I wanted to talk, I wanted to just ask you about your workshops. What do you do in your workshops, and how people can find you?
Well, the best way for people to find me would be to go to afterlifeawareness.com. I don't have any workshops scheduled right now. I'm going to school, so I am my schedule is really weird at the moment because I'm so swamped with school. I have nothing scheduled at the moment. I usually do workshops all around the Northwest where I live and around the country. I just came back from doing one in Kentucky for the regional conference of a group called the Compassionate Friends, which is a bereavement group for parents who've had children die. I speak there. I've done that the last couple of years. I'm working on putting together the first ever national conference on after-death communication with a few people who are very notable in the field. So we're working on that, but that's not going to be until next spring. So at the moment, my workshop schedule is just really nothing. My new book is coming out in September, so I would suggest to everybody that you just go to my website, afterlifeawareness.com. You'll be able to read excerpts from my new book. You'll find a link to my old book, A Swan in Heaven. And I'm available to do workshops anywhere. I just haven't planned anything because I'm too busy to plan anything. It's pretty crazy. It's kind of a catch-22. But I'd love to come back and talk about religious history sometime because that's my new passion, and that's a big part of what I do.
I definitely would like to have that conversation with you and have you back anytime. I really loved chatting with you, and also I wanted to for the listeners tell us a little bit about Danny's Dialogues and how they can reach you, or maybe even become members.
Well, okay. You're a member, right, Renee?
I am.
A member?
I am, yes.
The Danny Dialogues is an online Yahoo discussion group that I started a couple of years ago. My son is Danny, and he's the one that I channel in my books and my teachings. And I realized that I should have an online dialogue group where periodically I post a channeled message from Danny or from my other guides, and people can respond and talk about it. However, it's turned out to be something a little bit different than that. I hardly ever post messages anymore because the members, I've got about 110 of them around the world, are very active, and they're doing their own thing. They're posting their own messages. We have one guy there who has recently developed an amazing channeling ability. His name is Chris Seaton, and he lives in England. And so he sends channeled messages now, too, which is great. And people share their experiences with after-death communication. A lot of them are bereaved individuals who've lost a loved one, and they're all receiving messages from the other side. And so what happens a lot on the Danny Dialogues is that people are just talking about dreams that they've had and visions and things that have happened and sharing information and getting support from each other. And every once in a while, I will post a message from Danny or something. So it's a wonderful group. If you're interested in after-death communication, or if you're interested in learning and sharing experiences that you've had with your own departed loved ones who have been communicating with you, this is the place to go. And it's a Yahoo group. The address is kind of weird to give online, but to give on the air. But if you go to my website at afterlifeawareness.com, you will find a link to it.
Great. And I also had it listed on the show page, so if anybody's interested, you can check the show page out. And I just want to say, I give a hello out to some of the people in the chat room. Thank you guys all for coming into the chat room, and for everybody that came on tonight to listen in. And we definitely want to have Terry back, and thank you very much, Terry, for coming back. And I'm so glad your dog's okay. And